Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. Before I get into today's review, I do want to mention if you'd like to support the Gaming Gang, we do have a Patreon now. That link is in the show notes. And of course, be sure to join the gang on Discord. There will be a link to our Discord server with an invite down in the show notes as well. So today I am going to share my review of Kult, Divinity Lost from Helmgast AB and Modiphius Entertainment. This 384-page hardcover carries an MSRP of $71.95. You can grab just the PDF alone over at DriveThruRPG for $33.27. Now, if you order from Modiphius Entertainment, you will receive the PDF absolutely free. And stay tuned, because I'm going to tell you how you can get into the running to win my copy of the PDF that came with this physical book. And as with all of my contests, I promise it'll be really easy to jump aboard. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got Kult, Divinity Lost. Couple of things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, the fine folks over at Helmgast AB were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page, which is actually located towards the back of the book. A lot of folks work very hard to bring this to life. And if I try to pronounce these names, I guarantee that I would butcher them. So let's just take a peek, give credit where credit is due. If you're not familiar with Kult, it is an urban horror role-playing game. It is an infamous urban horror role-playing game, I would say. This is the 4th edition of Kult. And when it originally came out in 1991 in Sweden, it was banned in many stores. And it was also eventually banned by the Pope. So when I say this is a controversial urban horror role-playing game, I'm not joking. So I do also understand the 2nd and 3rd editions of Kult sort of moved away from the setting that created all the controversy and aimed more towards being a little more traditional, as well as really focusing on gameplay and combat and more maybe crunchy rules. That is not going to be the case with Divinity Lost, because this is built on the skeleton of the Apocalypse engine. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a powered by the Apocalypse role-playing game, because there are some major changes which are very obvious for anyone familiar with the Apocalypse engine. But that's the DNA it's built upon. So as far as Kult Divinity Lost, we're going to start off about the first 130 pages is going to be devoted to the player as well as the player character. Now, as far as our core mechanics, as far as action resolution, very simple. The player will roll 2 10-sided dice, and they are going to use whatever modifiers they happen to have for that move. On a result of 9 or less, it is a failure. A result of 15 or higher, it is a complete success. And a result of 10 to 14 is going to be a success, but so some sort of a complication will arise. And those of you out there who are familiar with the Apocalypse engine already know that it's that middle ground that drives much of the storytelling in Powered by the Apocalypse games. So as far as the player characters, we're going to start off. We've got various different archetypes for their characters. And these archetypes are relatively broad, So you're not looking at, oh, well, this is someone who does a particular thing only. And it's important to keep in mind that in Kult Divinity Lost, the player characters are all broken in some respect. They're incomplete. They all have a dark secret. And as far as these archetypes go, we're going to see some examples of occupations. So we've got the archetype of the detective. So we might have private eye, lawyer, investigator, detective, obviously enough, hacker, conspiracy theorist are just a few examples there. As far as the dark secrets, we will have 5, and these are suggestions that the player character will choose one from, or maybe discuss with their game master, taking something that's not on the list or creating their own dark secret. We also have advantages and disadvantages. The player is going to choose 2 disadvantages and 3 advantages. As far as our attributes go, we have 3 passive attributes and 7 active attributes. And our passive attributes are fortitude, reflexes, and willpower. They are passive because those modifiers come into use when the character is reacting to something, when the environment or an NPC or something is acting upon them, then you use those. That's why they're called passive. And then we also have our active, which are charisma, coolness, intuition, perception, reason, soul, and violence. So with the passive attributes, the player will be able to assign +2, +1, and 0. And then as far as the active attributes, we are looking at +3 through -2, which will be assigned to those attributes. Something I also think is pretty interesting is the archetype is not going to determine how you will assign your modifiers. I thought that's very cool because that way you can choose an archetype you find interesting and also custom tailor the character towards what you're interested in being able to focus on as some of your specialties. We also got a section talking about the looks of the character, and really it's simply keywords to kind of give the player an idea of how to put together the appearance of their character. And then lastly, we have a section, relations, which I like a lot because it gives you an idea of how you could tie that particular player character archetype in with other characters in the game. Definitely like that a ton. Then we're going to get into our traits, and these are the disadvantages and the advantages. There's about a 3-to-1 ratio, advantages over disadvantages. Of course, all of these are tied into a particular attribute in some way. We also get information about what success and failure may mean in regards to these advantages and disadvantages. We'll also get into detail about the various different dark secrets. So you may have things along the lines of the character committed a crime, or maybe they've made a dark pact with evil forces, or maybe they performed experiments on people, or maybe they're a victim of medical experiments. So we've got quite a few there. Now, one aspect of the character creation that's very cool is you're never tied into an archetype. If you want to create your own archetype, you can. And if you don't want to use an archetype, you can create the character from scratch. That's fine as well. Like that a ton. So all of that is focused on the players. You get a little bit of information about how do you play the game. But in essence, the action resolution is easy. You're rolling the 2 10-sided dice. You're using your modifiers that you might have coming into play. And then 9 or less, failure, 15 or higher, a complete success, and 10 to 14 success. But of course, if you are familiar with Apocalypse Engine games, you'll slide right on into that. Now, of course, I do want to also mention the player moves as well as the game master moves, because for a lot of gamers out there, both players and GMs, if you're not familiar with the Apocalypse engine, it kind of throws you off. You see these moves, these lists of moves, and you think, well, hold on, wait a second. Is that all my character can do? No, that's not really the case. A lot of moves are very, very broad. So a lot of things fall under those moves. And of course, advantages and disadvantages are also kind of considered to be moves. So as far as like active advantages, active disadvantages, that might throw off some players too, because it might feel like, oh my gosh, look at all of these different things that I can do. And what I would recommend as far as Kult Divinity Lost as a player, focus on what you want to do and let the rules take care of themselves. And that sort of goes for the game master as well. Just like when I talk about a lot of modern role-playing games have so much on the character sheet that players spend far, far too much time looking at their character sheet, trying to figure out, well, where's the answer to this challenge, as opposed to just coming up with an idea and taking it from there. That will apply to Kult Divinity Lost as well. As far as combat, very simple. Once again, we're still using that same sort of action resolution. We do have harm, we have wounds, and we have armor. So as far as the player characters go, you have a number of wounds. It is not many. And of course, we're not talking like hit points. So you're human beings, you're squishy. That's how things go. And things can get out of hand very quickly and very deadly, all in all. So essentially what you're looking at is things do harm. And then if you have something that might be considered as armor that will absorb some of that, whatever's left over is going to be your wounds. Easy enough. So the Game Master facing section has got loads and loads of really cool stuff. But before I get into that, I do want to mention how you can get into the running to win my copy of the PDF that I received with this physical book. I will make it pretty easy. First of all, you just have to be a subscriber to the channel. Hopefully you give this video a thumbs up. Now, I can't tell if you do or not, but I would certainly appreciate if you do. And then in the comment section, I want to know what you find the most appealing about urban horror role-playing games. And then I'll select a random commenter and announce the winner on the May 6th live edition of the Gaming Gang Dispatch. And no, for this contest, you do not have to be watching live. All right, let's continue on. And of course, as far as the Game Master section, loads of great information about not only running Kult Divinity Lost, but also being able to try to make sure that you push the envelope with the horror without actually crossing a certain line that your players and yourself have at the game table, because that is going to be a tricky proposition because of the setting. But we get information about how to utilize Game Master moves, as well as creating stories. Once again, I have to stress, this is a storytelling game. So that is its main focus, creating and telling stories that are going to spook your players at the game table. Then the third section of the book is going to be the setting. And as with many urban horror IPs, be it books, television, movies, role-playing games, we have the world that we think we live in, and then there's the world that really exists. And what happens in Kult Divinity Lost is the player characters begin to see the veil drop. And they do see these other realms which are pushing and pulling at our existence taking place. Now, once again, this is a very dark, very mature setting. So it is not unusual to have topics such as physical and sexual abuse, drug abuse, mental illness, insanity, and so forth taking place in an average game of Kult Divinity Lost, because as I had mentioned previously, the player characters are broken or incomplete in some way. They have a dark secret, and those dark secrets are going to drive the action in this role-playing game. It's going to drive the storytelling. I would say if you're a fan of movies such as Hellraiser or Jacob's Ladder, which starred Tim Robbins, or even David Cronenberg's Videodrome, then this is going to be right up your alley because it's got that weird, bizarre darkness to it that those films have. This is not the Sixth Sense kind of horror. There is also a lot of sexualization in the game. Now, as far as the artwork, this is not the Kickstarter edition where the artwork really kind of pushed the envelope. Although there's plenty of bizarre and spooky artwork in this edition, it is not that special Kickstarter edition that was out there. Production quality throughout is excellent. Really, really nicely done. Nice, thick paper stock. This is a book that's really going to hold up very, very nicely. Get a bookmark, just a single bookmark, but that's okay. So as far as more about the setting, we've got these different realms which are pushing and pulling on our existence. And we've got places like Metropolis. No, I'm not talking about Superman's adopted hometown. It is a really, really freaky location where humans probably originated from and then moved on to our current reality. We've got Inferno, we've got the underworld, Gaia, some really wild stuff. And as you can see, just flipping on through here, this is a bit of, I don't want to necessarily say bestiary that you were looking at there, but kind of an idea of the different entities and creatures which exist in these various different realms. Really wild, bizarre stuff. So we've got that. We also have some information about awakened archetypes if you want to use these options, where these are actually player characters who have pierced the veil, so they know what is really going on. Like I said, these are kind of optional. You don't necessarily have to deal with these. But all in all, this is a fantastically presented setting. Is it going to be for everyone? No, absolutely not. And I think that is one of the most difficult things to probably figure out about whether Kult Divinity Lost is going to be for you and your game group, because it's very, very easy for someone to see this and go, oh yeah, wow, that looks really creepy. That looks spooky. I'm going to pick this up. And then they get it and they realize, whoa, wait a second. This is a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. So please keep that in mind. All right, so that is a peek at Kult Divinity Lost from Helmgast AB and Modiphius Entertainment. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. Gotta say, I'm really impressed with Kult Divinity Lost. It is spooky, it is creepy, it is dark, it is bizarre, it is mature. It is its own very, very unique setting. That, I think, is its biggest selling point. Plus, the focus is on storytelling. It's not focused on mechanics. It's focused on driving a story and scaring your friends and family at the game table. So presentation-wise, phenomenal, excellent. Writing is excellent. I really enjoyed reading Divinity Lost. I really, really did. It is just so well presented. But it is controversial for a reason. And I guess the easiest way I would sum up if Kult Divinity Lost is going to be for you and your group is if you're familiar with Delta Green and the mature adventures that come out for Delta Green and you're fine with those, then Kult Divinity Lost is going to be a no-brainer. You're going to want to add this to your collection. If your idea of a horror role-playing game is chill, then this is certainly not going to be a role-playing game which is tailored for you and your players by any stretch of the imagination. If, like I said, movies like the Hellraiser series or Jacob's Ladder or Videodrome are some of your favorites, you love that. You love that kind of weird, bizarre take on what is reality and what isn't. And you can handle mature subjects like drug abuse and mental illness, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and feel comfortable having that in your role-playing games, then yeah, I got to say, Kult is certainly something you're going to want to take a peek at. Myself personally, I can't see running Kult Divinity Lost with my current group. It's just not going to be something that I think would appeal to them. But like I said, really enjoyed reading through the book. And if it's the right fit, setting-wise, theme-wise, for your group, I think you will really, really dig Kult Divinity Lost. So as kind of a disclaimer, I wouldn't necessarily run this at my game table, and I would not try to adapt it by any stretch because I wouldn't want to defang the setting. But if you have a group of players and you yourself would be comfortable with this, man, it is so good. So having said all that, on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Kult Divinity Lost an 8.5. Even though I would not run it with my group, I think this is a fantastic book. I did ding the score a little bit because I wouldn't run it, but still 8.5 out of 10. It is that good. Take a peek if it seems like it's up your alley. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. If you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell, because you'll not only learn about when I share videos such as this review, you'll also be notified when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Once again, if you would like to support the Gaming Gang, be sure to check out our Patreon. We do have the link down in the show notes. And join our Discord server. Hang with the gang. You'll find that link in the show notes as well. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. And until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.